Dear students, welcome to the next lecture of graphics or rendering pipeline. In this lecture, we will discuss the very important portion of rendering pipeline, that is vertex processing, also known as point processing or pixel processing. Here we will discuss vertex processing in terms of geometry stage, where it is important to understand model transform, view transform, etc. So let's start. In vertex processing, when it is discussed in terms of geometry stage, then there are 6 important stages to be understand. Number 1, model transform. Number 2, view transform. Number 3, lightning. Number 4, projection transform. Number 5, clipping. And number 6, viewport transform. All these stages are discussed one by one in this lecture to understand the concept of vertex processing in terms of geometry stage. First of all, we will discuss model transform and or view transform. Both are interrelated and interdependent to each other, therefore discussed together to understand the concept. However, model transform is closely related to the object which is being transformed from 3D scene to 2D screen image, and view transform is related to the positioning of the camera which capture the coordinates of the object to be transformed. The camera used in view transform can be a digital camera that we use in our daily life, or a virtual camera that is already built in graphics software like Maya, 3D Studio Max, etc. So simply we can say that object related information is called model transform and camera related information is called view transform. Keeping this in mind, you can see on the slide number 1 point, each object and the respective vertices are positioned, oriented, scaled in the scene with a model transform. Here the scene is natural scene representing 3D environment. So to capture the object in 3D scene, number 2 point says camera is positioned and oriented represented by the view transform. Here an important point is raised. During this transformation, the view transformation becomes inverse view transformation, that is, the transform that places the camera at the origin of the coordinate system facing in the negative z direction. It means the coordinates in the 3D scenes are inverted to be represented on 2D screen image. Hence, in this way, the entire scene is transformed with the help of inverse view transform. So dear student, here we have understand the concept of model transform, which is related to the object, and the view transform, which is related to the camera positioning. Therefore, these are discussed together in this respect. Dear students, here you can see the demonstration of model transform and or view transform with the help of figure. To understand these concepts, first of all, we will see the left side of the figure, where you can see 4 objects in different colors and shapes. That is green, red, orange and blue. Green for square, red for circle, orange for octagonal and blue for triangle. These objects are lie on XZ plane. Also you are viewing different transformations that are M1 for green object, M2 for orange object, M3 for red object, M4 for blue object. All these M1, M2, M3 and M4 represents the transformations of these objects. These transformations might be translate, rotate or scale of the objects. V is also a transformation matrices, but it reflects the camera position. Hence, we can say that V places and orientates the camera in the space. And finally, the above of the figure, you will see camera direction in the 3D environment. In summary, the left side figure represents the complete setup of objects lies in 3D natural scene environment and the camera position. Now when it converted into 2D screen image, it is mandatory that the view transform should be inverse and represented using V inverse in the figure. The V inverse transforms the camera to the origin looking along the negative Z axis. The effect of inverse view transform, that is V inverse, can be viewed on the right side of the figure. Here you can see that the direction of the objects are changes because of applying negative Z axis. Another property, view frustum, is introduced in connection with inverse view transform. The view frustum in 3D computer graphics is the region of space in the modeled world that may appear on the screen. It is the field of view of a perspective virtual camera system. Means how camera see the objects in 3D world and transform into 2D screen image. So dear student, I hope with this demonstration, the concept of model and view transform have been cleared in your mind. Both transform, that is model and view transforms, are combined in the model view transform. Hence, the model view transform can be represented with the help of inverse view transform and the translation matrices applied to the objects. Another important stage in vertex processing is lighting and illumination. This lighting or illumination is also helpful to generate shading on the objects. The concept of lighting or illumination and shading have been discussed in detail in our previous lectures. However, for brainstorming, it is the interaction of light sources and surfaces is represented with a lightning illumination model. Hence, lighting computes color of each vertex, that is based on light source positions and properties, and second based on transformed position, transformed normal and material properties of a vertex. All these points reflect that lighting and illumination plays important role in capturing the object. Once again, to understand the lighting and illumination concept, see our previous lectures. Dear students, here we are going to discuss an important stage, projection transform in vertex processing. First of all, it is needed to understand what is projection. Projection is the process of converting a 3D object into a 2D object. It is also defined as mapping or transformation of object in projection plane or view plane. The view plane is a displayed surface. View plane is also known as view volume. Hence, we can say that projection transformation is the transformation of view volume, that is cuboid or frustum, into canonical view volume, that is into a cube. For more clarification regarding view volume, it is defined as the volume of space that is actually rendered into the image is called the view volume. Things inside the view volume make it into the image. Things that are not in the view volume are clipped and cannot be seen. On the other hand, canonical view volume in the projection transform represents the geometry into a canonical view, which is normalized according to the device coordinates on which the 2D screen image has to be appeared. That is, only x and y coordinate will be mapped on the screen and z will be almost useless but used for depth test. So dear student, I hope you have understand the concept of projection transform in relation to view volume and canonical view volume. As I already told you that view volume represents the objects inside or outside and need to be transformed accordingly. There are two approaches. Number one, orthographic, which is a combination of translation and scaling, and all objects are translated and scaled in the same way. Orthographic projection is represented with the help of cuboid in the view plane. Number two approach is perspective projection. It is a complex transformation. The scaling factor depends on the distance of an object to the viewer, which indicates that the objects farther away from the camera appear smaller. Perspective object transformation is represented using pyramidal frustum in projection transform. In this slide, you can see the demonstration of projection transform with the help of figure. As I already told you in the previous slide that projection transforms the view volume into the canonical view volume. Also, the view volume depends on camera properties. These are orthographic projection or cuboid and perspective projection or pyramidal frustum. Both approaches are demonstrated in the below figure. Starting from left to right, the first two figure reflects the concept of orthographic projection using the cuboid approach, whereas the last two figures reflect the concept of perspective projection using the pyramidal frustum approach. If you observe the figure closely for both approaches, the resultant is a canonical view volume, which is in the form of cube. This endorses the concept that in projection transform, the view volume is converted into canonical view volume, whatever the camera properties are, that is orthographic projection or perspective projection. Hence, in all cases, the end result is canonical view volume in the cubic form. However, view volume is specified by near, far, left, right, bottom characteristics in terms of object clipping. Clipping is closely related to view volume. The primary use of clipping in computer graphics is to remove objects, lines, or line segment that are outside the view volume. Or simply, we can say that primitives like lines, triangles, polygons, etc. that intersects the boundary of the view volume are clipped. It means that primitives inside the view volume are passed to the next processing stage and primitives that are outside the view volume are discarded. Clipping is useful to delete and generate vertices and primitives. The concept of clipping is demonstrated in the figure below. If you will observe the figure at the left side, three objects are shown in the view plane. Object in red is outside the view volume. Object in green is inside the view volume and safe, whereas object in orange is slightly outside the view volume. Hence, the objects which are not part of the view volume must be clipped and then passed to the next processing stage. This you can see in the figure at the right side after applying the clipping operation. As red object is not found because it was outside the view volume in the previous stage. However, green object is found in a complete form as it is already in the view volume or inside in the view volume. And finally, the orange object is clipped by the part which was outside the view volume and also generated two new vertices to be processed in the next processing stage. Final stage of vertex processing is viewport transform or screen mapping. The concept of viewport transform or screen mapping is that projected primitive coordinates, that is xp, yp, zp, are transformed to screen coordinates, that is xs, ys. Simply, we can say that 3D natural scene coordinates are converted into 2D screen coordinates in viewport transform or screen mapping. However, in screen coordinates, one more coordinate is added to represent the depth value of the object within the screen. After the inclusion of depth value, the screen coordinates transform into window coordinates, that is xs, ys, zw. Zw is the depth value of the object in the screen. The whole process is demonstrated in the figure below. At the right side of the figure, you will observe the screen mapping in 2D coordinates, and at the left side of figure, you will see projected primitive coordinates in 3D form. Following steps are required for viewport transform or screen mapping. Number 1, xp, yp are translated and scaled from the range of -1, 1 to actual pixel position xs, ys on the display screen. Number 2, zp is generally translated and scaled from the range of -1, 1 to 0, 1 for zw. Zw is a depth value of an object on the screen. Number 3, the screen coordinates xs, ys represents the pixel position of a fragment that is generated in a subsequent step. And number 4, zw, the depth value is an attribute of this fragment used for further processing. So dear students, these are the steps finally adopted for viewport transform in order to convert projected primitive coordinates into screen coordinates. Here is the flow diagram of vertex processing which summarizes the concept. Dear student, you can observe the flow of the concept along with the stages incorporated within the flow to achieve the desired goal. What we want to achieve through this flow diagram is that how 3D coordinates converted into 2D coordinates. In the diagram, the object space is the 3D space natural world. Here we apply model transform and view transform. Further, simultaneously in the same realm, lightning projection is applied, and then finally clipping and viewpoint transform is computed to generate window coordinates, which is our 2D screen. In this slide, the vertex processing is represented in the form of input and output. That is what is required for vertex processing as an input and what is available as an output after vertex processing. So as an input, what is required for vertex processing? Number one, vertices in object model space, 3D positions, attributes such as normal, material properties, texture, colors, etc. And finally, what is available as an output after vertex processing? Number one, vertices in window space. Number two, 2D pixel position. Number three, attributes such as normal, material properties, texture codes. Number four, additional or updated attributes such as normalized depth, distance to the viewer, color, result of the evaluation of the lightning model. Student, this clarify to you that for vertex processing, what inputs are required and what we achieve after processing all those inputs. Hence, till now we have covered the important major step of rendering pipeline, that is vertex processing, in detail. The remaining three steps, primitive processing, rasterization and fragment processing, will be discussed in the next lecture in detail. If you observe the flow diagram of the rendering pipeline, the major steps are shown in orange rectangles along with scene description as an input and display as an output, and the flow is from top to bottom. So dear student, in this lecture we have discussed in detail vertex processing, and in the next lecture we will discuss two more major steps along with rasterization, that is primitive processing and fragment processing. So stay tuned.